Welcome back, everyone. This is what we have currently at the end of this lesson. As you can see, we've got a working blog and we have modules that carousel through your images and your videos. We also have rich text, which you can write HTML in, like forms and any kind of maps. And here it is in, this is basically a mobile example. So you can see that the Bootstrap works really well with mobile. Everything sizes and stacks correctly. So just kind of screwing around with our examples of sideways, and the post is just basically an API service that's being called out through just a few lines of PHP. Okay, so what we're going to do is kind of walk through the importance of how this all works. We have compiled all of our data types, like our content types, into different categories, whether it's an image, a YouTube video, it's a map, or just straight HTML text. We need to know the type as far as the key, and then we need to know the address as far as the key. Now those values will be basically one type of whatever type of media it is, so we'll prepare. And so like if it's a video from YouTube, we'll put in it'll go into the list and pile into the carousel for videos, and same goes for the images. Now here I'm writing out some rich text in case the type of content is HTML. You can write anything you want. I mean, these forms go a long way. If you write a form in here, and then you have an endpoint somewhere on the internet, this is just as good as gold. I mean, you don't have to hire anybody if you know how to type this stuff. And if you did hire somebody, it'd be super easy for them to integrate a form right there into your page, no questions asked. You just write the rich text the way you want it with HTML. Now, granted, you need to trust the person who was writing this, because they could technically write JavaScript directly in here. And, that could crash your site if, they type in some kind of loop that crashes your browser. Now, I'll be honest, the reason this thing is such a neat tool is there is no database. So if somebody is maybe causing a little problems and they'd like to destroy your database, they can't. There's not a database. And so coincidentally, if they want to do some kind of SQL injection to mess with you or something, that's not a thing. This doesn't, you couldn't, and SQL to what? There is no SQL being used. There's no database to destroy, nothing. There's just a file that this thing's grabbing locally, and that's that. That is kind of the key here, is we're trying to keep this simple and something that people can use that aren't web developers. So we're kind of treating it a little bit like a WordPress, for that matter, but safer and not as complex, because it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be as complex. As long as you know your limits of hey, this is just kind of a brochure. Let's go ahead and build it out to be as such. And don't think too hard about it. There's not a lot of functionality going on in an online brochure. Forms is pretty much the highest point of complex, concepts. And so as you can see, there's all basic JavaScript. We're doing a lot of modules that basically will go through your content, see how many pictures are in this, and that shall be the amount of pictures in our photo module, and so on and so forth. Now here I'm going to turn off the blog request for now. That way I can work without it creating an error. And you saw this in the other posts that I was doing. I'm basically doing this so that I can work locally. Now obviously I can go into my PHP file and tell it I'd like to have this local address accepted as well, but it's not really worth it. Let's just turn off the blog and get to work. And as you can see, now it's working locally. That error right there is basically YouTube's. So we're going to go ahead and just work locally here. Don't worry about that. Now, as you noticed, I did not have the max and the active post listed on the last one. That's just something I skipped. So I'm just going to swing in and say, this blog has this many posts, and we're on this post in particular out of that number. And so I'm going to put a target together based on the max. Make sure they're all don't put caps in here. This thing will name it and turn it into small, non-caps. So let's just go ahead and put that together, these targets, and we'll move on from there. It's just a span, which is something that really is kind of just floating. It's not a block level element. So when it swings in here, I'm going to say I'd like that non-block level element span that has the attribute of data, the data set of active post. I would like to put the active post number there as a target. So once I figure that out, I display it there with a selector. Now I'm also going to do the length. How long is this thing? This one won't change, obviously, because it's not like active post, which we're going from post to post. This one will be this is the total, and we just get this on the beginning, and that's that. So, yeah, this is this is all stuff you would learn like in your first kind of year of JavaScript. It's like, here, this is a selector, and I want this text to show up there. And that's pretty much it. Now, obviously, when you work with other software, instead of that, they'll have like, sometimes they'll have a little squiggly, crazy syntax like PHP or .NET to show you, okay, now this is where that value goes. And we're kind of doing the same thing. We just have a little target instead of something. Here, that thing, that next, it, literally the next needed a capital. That's it. And so now it all works. Now you can see the blog post, which active is 4 out of 17. And now we can move on with what we intended to do with this course. Let's just move on to, as I said, we comment out our local. And then we start building the things that we would like. Now, granted, if we don't have any events, we don't want the events to show up, and that's fine. And we just don't want a blank space either. And then so right here, I'm just testing to see, like, hey, if there's no events, let me know how many events there are. And so I just want to see, and then I'll return false if there's 0. Yeah, we just double check this here. We needed to move that around. It wasn't gonna, it could work down here at the bottom, but it needs to be up here. It'll be more effective. There, you see? Now if I don't have any things, it'll show up like this. So it's all good. All right. Cool. All right, let's go ahead and bring in those carousels. Now, these are easy. These are something I've had for years. It's basically, I'm going to grab the HTML from the React file that I showed earlier that had the dogs. And I'm just going to put in a media target. This is actually something I've used for a lot of small businesses. And once you build these things like a carousel, obviously you could just keep it. You don't need to like rebuild it every time. So don't worry about it. Just copy what you had. I mean, what you're talking about is basically HTML that has a couple of arrows and then has like a stage where you want the image to show up. Those arrows in particular, when you click on it, it has a function that you're just going to utilize, and it's going to pass on which direction you're heading. Is it previous or next on the buttons? And so I'm going to take the functionality that I had and then just bring it in. And now clearly you want it to look pretty, so there's a little bit of CSS that I'm going to bring in from my React project as well. And as you can see, it's got the carousel stylings right here, as I'm showing in the video. And these stylings are just to make things look pretty, things that go in line, spacing, a lot of that. YouTube in particular, when you have the video embedded, you want to make sure that it has like a minimum height, so it doesn't because it doesn't have a minimum height unless you tell it. And you want to shape it. And also, let's also remember what's going to be next to this video. Is it going to be an image? Because that's the way I have it lined up. And if that's the case, how big is this image? Is it going to look a little lopsided? So I want to make sure that I put an ID that's unique for this and call it media, YT for YouTube. And that way I can specifically say what size I want. And it doesn't have to match into the other sizes because now it's unique. And so when I start moving around, I kind of want it to match the size of the image it's sitting next to. Otherwise, it'll look kind of lopsided. And so remember when you put in images into your website, there's kind of a checklist of quality. Is this a nice image, high resolution enough, which doesn't ask much because the web is 72 dpi. So you're not asking much, but is it at least 72 dpi? And then you want to go for the dimensions. Like, okay, so this is the window I'm typically showing on a desktop. Does this image, do I need to stretch it? Because if so, I might need a better image. But if not, I will make sure this YouTube, the Media YT, is going to have the video I've chosen with the right size, and that size hopefully will match the one next to it. And that's real basic stuff. I'll ask when the image carousel and the video carousel show up that they opt to the first of whatever's on their array, and it will populate the target down below, and that will be that. And now I put the arrows for previous and next on the top. I think that's better use of, I want the usage for the user to be very intuitive. And especially like when it comes to closing something or going from right to left, I feel that if you put the buttons on top of the image, it will tie into their head a little bit faster of what this is. And then from there, they won't have to go, like, let's say the image is really big and they have to go underneath the image and then they discover there's a previous and next button. It's like, I don't want that. I want it on top. Now you can see I've also done like a substring for the name of the image, and it's just the name of the file. And coincidentally, these files are located on like a Google Photos, so the title's real long. I would recommend putting your files somewhere where you can create a path that is, more appropriate for your images, and name your images appropriately. Like, this is fish. I was like fish image, or fish market, something to that effect. So it's all up to you what you want to name it, and then your substring, you're going to have to kind of design it to where you cut out the path of where it's located and just have the file name. That would be ideal. I might do that later on so that you can see what I'm talking about. So here I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing that I did with the YouTube carousel that I did with events. Now remember, if there are no events, I don't want it to show the event thing. It'll just be useless, and the user will be like, why is this huge blank spot on my screen? And we don't want that. That just looks like something's broken. So I'm going to go around and say, hey, is YouTube array 0, like the first item in array, is that a thing? Because if you ask YouTube array if something exists and it doesn't, it'll say no. And so that's what we're betting on. If it says no, it's like undefined or false, then that gives you the opportunity to do something else. And in this case, that gives us the opportunity to hide the event or the module, because we just don't have any pictures or any YouTube videos, which is, they don't need to know that. They're the guest. And, do you wander through and show your guest all empty rooms? No, just show them the ones with stuff in it. Anyway, so you see that size. You see the lopsided kind of default, what we're dealing with. Now, obviously, the carousels are working, but the size is strange. So, let's go ahead and let's get these all worked out. So it's just a little bit of tweaking these targets. Okay, so I'm also going to put in some more stuff. This is for the HTML content. It's like a rich text editor. So when you type something, anything, whether it's, you're using just text will work here, but you can use paragraph tags and, universal or unordered lists. Obviously, anything HTML related is going to be in a string, and it's going to be typed up here, and then it will be displayed as you see fit. Well, like I said a minute ago, you can type JavaScript in here, so trust the people that you have doing your data updating on your website. If they get upset, they could break your stuff. But that's the same with any employee. Any employee could treat a customer like crap and hurt your business. Any employee could write something malicious or make something that crashes the browser. So it's like this along with everything else. So I've kept it to where, since there's no database, they could really do little harm to anything. They could just screw up static information that you could just retype, or hopefully you have a copy of this stuff. But my first notion, as you can see here, is to, on runtime, ask, is there any HTML content at all? And if so, I'll go write it. And if not, then I'll be hiding that section. And here is the string I'm going to go through a for loop in case it does have more than 0 of the HTML content array. And then I'll start doing a build on, okay, I've got a string that's empty, and now I'm going to add to it whatever's the first one, then I'm going to add to it whatever the second one is on the list, and so on and so forth until the list is completely built out in the string. And it has represented all of our iterations. So fun times. I'm going to do this also for the maps. The maps are really simple, and I might probably add on to it because it just says like the address, and then it has the embedded map. Now, we've had the embedded map concept before, so as you can see, I'm going to swing up and just get those pieces for the embedded map. Oh, and by the way, YouTube contacted me about the keys for this map. And so if this map gets utilized anywhere else, it won't work because I've told YouTube, this is the key for my maps. You're only allowed to accept requests from these URLs. And coincidentally, that shuts out everybody but me. So you're going to need, when you do this, to get your own Google, map API key. It's free, and I mean, as long as you don't use, if you start using it a bunch, they'll start charging you. But we're just doing classes here, and I've run a business, in the past with using, Google Maps, and it's totally worth it. They've got good support. It's worth the money if in case you do want to use them. But since I'm just doing, this is just educational stuff, so here I am going to take the Google map, my key, and then whatever address that I have compiled into a URI component. So here you go. I've got my ID, and then I want to do my URI component, which turns it into something kind of like the web would use when you're putting something in a URL. It's like we don't, the spaces would be like 20 and then the percentage sign, and it's not really legible, but it is for the browser. So you encode URI so that address will go correctly to the Google Maps. And as you can see from the string, I've got the address, my key as represented in the ID num, and then of course Q is the key to the value of my address. And that's the embedded code for this one piece if you want to put, let's say, just a map on your website. Well, this is how you would do it. I've prepared it so you don't have to know any code. You just put in the address. So not too shabby. It's just like the section where we're doing rich HTML text. I just made this. So if you wanted to write a map in HTML text, you would do the same thing. It's a little difficult because, as you can see, I've had to compile a whole bunch of stuff together. So that's why I made it down here too. But now that it's all built out, I'm going to add that string to the component. And there you go. There's a couple maps for you to show that they are working. And I'm going to demonstrate the fact is the rich text can also do like a form. So I'm going to go ahead and just build that out real quick and show you. It's kind of fast and loose. I'm just trying to prove a point here, first and last name and then a button. Not much of a form actually, but I'm just, like I said, trying to prove a point. And I would say that you would wrap these into form tags and then put a submit instead of a type button, and then you're good to go. Whatever the action attribute would be, which would be the address of whatever your service is located. All right. So there you can see there's a form, submit button. Doesn't go anywhere, but letting you know that's how that works. You can type a form if you like here. And you don't really need to know too much. So all this is just functionality. Now, granted, I know that this isn't like, hey, this doesn't look like a restaurant's data. Yeah, no, I know that. I'm going to have to go get a bunch of restaurants' menus and then type them up physically, and then I'll have a real example of what this was. This is just me building out the functionality right now. And as we spoke over earlier with the media YT ID, I need to get it around the same size as the photos I'm using. But just keep in mind, this makes it so you can either hard code your photos to be this size, or just make sure you size them to be this size before you upload them. It's up to you. Now, I will change a little bit of it. In case we're going to get to the phone and they're using their phone, I really just, it doesn't need to be that big of a screen anymore. So I've told it, if you go to phone, which is below 1024 pixels in width, then I need you to do something a little different. And you can see right here, I need to tweak it. We got a mess. But Currently, I'm working. I did it with auto, which didn't work. We need a width 100%. So we will watch, and I will fix this. So standard 100%. Yep. And now we got a size, and now we got everything sized up. Looks like that one steak picture that's black and white is the one, like that's the ugly duckling now. But as I can say, like, either you size this stuff with hard-coded JavaScript saying these pictures are great, but they need to be this size, or you upload the photos at the size you like. Up to you. If you don't follow these rules, it will look wildly unprofessional like this does right here. Like, you got to make them even. That's just the way to go. I don't care how you do it. It's got to be even. So, just to walk through, see how much better that looks. Okay. Another thing we've got going on here, as you see, this is starting to fill out. Our functionality is starting to look like real stuff. So our category menu is a mess. It looks lopsided. Look at this, kind of lopsided. So what I'm going to do is go to Bootstrap. I'm going to get a nav bar. Now, I already have kind of a nav bar, so let's be careful what we're doing here. This is going to be unique. So let's take out that unordered list and put our target here in this div. So now, instead of our vertical menu, we're going to have it's a horizontal menu on the desktop, and then it'll go vertical for mobile. And so I'm utilizing this, but I got to take out all the stuff that Bootstrap has. Like, they have a ton of extra HTML attributes. They have a ton of JavaScript tied to this. Not necessary. They have a class called show. Now, when you put the show in there, their menu will hide or show based on if that class exists, and that's it. And it'll also be vertical and mobile, and as opposed to desktop, it'll be horizontal. And so that's all in CSS. I don't have to do any of that. And so look at this, how beautiful it's gotten. All of a sudden, I've got this thing that they pre-built. Now, granted, I don't need any of the JavaScript that they've got and stuff. So let's go ahead and we'll grab that function that I liked that was in the other one and slide it into this new menu. And then we'll do the same thing. When I click something, I need to run through and turn them all off so they're not active. And then find the one that is active and then add that active class. So as you see, when you click on something, it runs through, turns them all off, and then just turns the one on that you clicked. And this is the same thing we did in menus before. So we just need to know the specific. I go through all the data categories, turn them off and remove active, and then find the specific one and say, okay, add active. You can do it another way. I like doing this. This is more legible. Some people are like, how come you don't throw it in the loop? Because I don't want to. I think it's legible this way. I'm trying to make it so someone can walk through and easily read this. And so if I start getting confusing and refactoring into steps upon steps, it gets confusing. So anyway, I don't want that, especially in the class that I'm trying to teach people. So as you can see here, now we've got it working. Our menu is good to go. You can tell which one's active. It's all horizontal, keep in mind. Now it's pretty, and it works really great. Okay, so now we got to do the nav toggle. And it's super easy. Let's get that out of there. We don't need it. Now, all this extra attributes are useless. You know, we don't really need all this. I do need that unique ID, but I want to make it something that makes more sense to me. So now, menu nav bar. And on click here, I'm going to make a function that says show category. And that's that. And then show category menu is going to be a function I add in there. And it just adds the show class to our ID that we just created. And if you toggle the show class within that element, that's how the menu opens and closes. And watch here, I'm going to do a try catch. And within this try catch, I have an if statement that says if this document has the show class on the menu nav bar, you know, then obviously we got to take that down. We don't want it. And then if it's the other is the opposite is the truth, then we do want it. And so it's just a toggle of the easiest, and I don't know why they've written so much JavaScript in Bootstrap to get the same thing done that I'm doing right here in a couple lines of code. I mean, they made it very much more it's difficult as opposed to simple. So I don't recommend using the Bootstrap's JavaScript. Their CSS is great. Now we want to have it default open. So all I got to do is start off with the word show, hard code written into their HTML, and we'll start off as such. All right, so when I go to the menu, it's always open, and that's that. Much better. It looks way better, and I hope you guys agree. So, we can use a lot of ideas that Bootstrap has, and you can endorse them all the way through. And I really recommend getting to know all the utilities, especially for different sizes, because that really helps you go, what is this going to look like in mobile? That's all prepared, and you don't have to recreate the wheel ever. Everything's already ready for you. Just have to know that it's there. This is so much better than it was a little while ago. I hope you agree with me.